Today we will bring you a romantic love story, so let's get started. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any meaningful stories. Perched high on a hill overlooking the glittering city lights, the Cross estate stood silent, like a lone sentinel under the September moon. The mansion was a masterpiece of modern design. Sharp lines, polished stone, and floor-to-ceiling glass panels that reflected wealth but offered no warmth. To Luna Bennett, a 22-year-old girl from a dusty small town in the Midwest where cornfields stretched endlessly, it was both a lifeline and a labyrinth. She had arrived 6 months ago, clutching a small suitcase, hoping to build a better future than the one she left behind. Luna was no stranger to hardship. Orphaned at 10, she grew up in an overcrowded foster home, quickly learning that dreams were a luxury she couldn't afford. With her brown hair tied neatly in a ponytail and eyes as clear and as still as a quiet lake, she carried a beauty that needed no display. Her smile was rare, appearing only when she was alone, tending the herb garden behind the servants' quarters or scribbling in a worn journal about a life she barely dared to imagine. A small house with a front porch, a job she loved, and someone who truly saw her. But for now, her reality was the gray apron she wore and the endless duties of a housemaid, polishing silver, scrubbing floors, and staying invisible in the vast halls of Damian Cross's estate. Damian Cross, 34, was the kind of man who seemed to control the world without trying. As the CEO of Cross Enterprises, he had turned the family real estate company into an empire that reshaped city skylines. Tall and broad-shouldered, with jet black hair and striking features, he carried himself like someone who had never known failure. But beneath the tailored suits and confident handshakes was a man scarred by betrayal. His ex-wife, a rising actress, had left him 3 years ago for a rival developer, taking with her half of his faith in people. Since then, Damian lived by one simple rule: everything has a price, and emotions are a liability. He worked late, his office glowing above the hill, a lone figure surrounded by contracts and whiskey. The Cross estate was more than a home. It was a boundary. To Luna, it was survival, a stepping stone to a better future. To Damian, it was a fortress shielding him from a world he no longer trusted. Their paths rarely crossed. Luna moved through the mansion like a shadow, her steps light on the marble floors, while Damian's presence filled the room with a gravity that made her heart race, though she'd never admit it. She knew her place, a girl from nowhere polishing chandeliers for a man who could buy the whole town. But in quiet moments, when she caught him staring out the window, his shoulders heavy with an invisible weight, she wondered if he, too, was searching for something deeper. As the autumn leaves began to fall, scattering reds and golds across the manicured lawns of the estate, Luna stood at the edge of the herb garden, her hands scented with rosemary. She looked up at the glowing mansion in the dusk and whispered to herself, "One day, I'll build something of my own." High above in his office, Damian paused over a stack of papers, his eyes drifting toward the darkening sky. For a fleeting second, he felt a strange ache, a longing for something he had convinced himself he no longer needed. Neither of them knew that fate had already begun to weave their lives together, in ways that would break them, heal them, and change them forever. Autumn drifted gently through the Cross estate, carried on cool breezes tinged with the scent of dry leaves and firewood from the grand hearth in the main hall. Luna Bennett, with her gray apron tightly tied around her waist, moved through the vast corridors like part of the scenery, always present, never noticed. She wiped down the floor-to-ceiling windows, arranged fresh flowers in porcelain vases, and prepared coffee trays for Damian Cross's meetings, all with the care of someone who knew this job was her only ticket out of the past. But in rare quiet moments, while shelving books or sweeping the back courtyard, her heart slipped free from control, wandering to the man she only dared to admire from afar. Damian Cross was not an easy man to approach. He moved through the estate like a powerful gust, swift, decisive, and leaving a trail of tension in his wake. The staff whispered about him, a business genius, a man who tolerated no mistakes, someone who hadn't trusted anyone since his wife walked away. But Luna saw something else. She noticed him in the moments no one else did, like late at night when she cleaned the study and found him sitting at his desk, the dim lamp casting soft shadows on his face. He wasn't reading or working. He was just staring out the window, absently spinning an old Miles Davis CD, the label worn thin. The music played, slow and aching, like it was telling a story he could never put into words. One morning, as Luna left a tray of freshly baked butter cookies on the kitchen counter for the staff, she heard a familiar set of footsteps. Damien walked in, his gray suit perfectly pressed, though his eyes looked tired, like he hadn't slept. He stopped, looked at the cookies, and unexpectedly picked one up, taking a small bite. "Who made these?" he asked, voice deep but not harsh. Luna, who had been wiping the counter, startled, nearly dropping her cloth. I, I did, sir," she replied, eyes lowered to the floor. Damien gave a small nod, said nothing more, but before walking out, he glanced back at her, just a second longer than usual. "They're good," he said, then disappeared through the door. Luna's heart pounded, and she silently scolded herself for letting one tiny compliment rattle her so deeply. Moments like that, fleeting as they were, felt like stones dropped into Luna's still waters. Another time, while she was picking up a stack of scattered documents in the study, Damien walked in, not realizing she was there. He sat down, turned on the familiar jazz track, and murmured something about the old days. When Luna accidentally knocked over a book as she stood up, he looked up, momentarily surprised. "What are you doing here?" he asked, but his tone wasn't angry. "Just cleaning, sir," she said quickly, bending to retrieve the book. He studied her for a beat, then gestured to the CD on his desk. "You like jazz, miss?" He paused, realizing he didn't know her name. "Luna, sir." "Luna Bennett," she answered, cheeks burning. "And, I haven't heard much jazz." Damien nodded, saying nothing more. But as she left the room, she felt his gaze following her, like he'd just noticed she wasn't merely a shadow in the house. Those small interactions, brief as they were, nurtured something dangerous inside Luna. She began noticing Damien more. The way he ran his hand through his hair when stressed. The way he stood alone on the balcony during rainy nights, his shirt soaked but unfazed. She saw in him a familiar kind of loneliness, the kind she used to feel while lying in her tiny room, staring at the ceiling and wondering if anyone in the world would ever truly need her. But she also knew the line between them. He was Damien Cross, a man who could buy the world, and she was just Luna, an orphan with calloused hands and a journal full of silent dreams. One evening, while tidying up the study, Luna found the jazz CD tucked beneath a stack of papers. She picked it up, her fingers brushing over the faded words. "Kind of blue." She smiled faintly, imagining Damien listening to it in his quietest, most vulnerable moments. Without thinking, she slipped it into the pocket of her apron like a secret token. Later in her small room, she wrote in her journal, "He's not like they say. He's lonely like me. But who am I to think he'd ever see me?" She closed the book, reminding herself that this feeling was a path that led nowhere. Damien Cross lived in a world she could never belong to. But the heart, like the jazz that floated through his office late at night, never obeyed reason. And as autumn deepened, bringing sharper winds and longer shadows, Luna didn't know that those fleeting moments were leading her toward a night that would change everything. Autumn at the Cross estate had turned crisp and cool, the golden glow from the ballroom windows spilling soft light over the misty lawns. That night the mansion dazzled more than ever, hosting an extravagant party for Damien Cross's business partners. Sleek cars lined the circular drive. Laughter mixed with the sound of violins filled the night air. Luna Bennett, dressed in a simple black dress provided for event staff, moved quietly through the crowd. Without her usual gray apron, she looked different, her brown hair loose around her shoulders, her blue eyes catching flashes of chandelier light. But she was still invisible among the wealthy guests. Luna's job was to keep everything flawless. Clear glasses, replace table linens, make sure no one noticed her. She was used to blending into the background, but tonight her heart felt heavier. She had just seen Damien, standing among the guests in a tailored black suit, a rare smile on his lips as he clinked glasses with an investor. He looked dangerously handsome, and Luna hated herself for not being able to look away. She turned back to cleaning a wine stain on the tablecloth when she overheard a nearby man laugh and say to Damien, "You need to loosen up, Cross. I know a place. I'll send someone over tonight. Damien smirked but didn't respond. Still, the comment sent a chill through Luna's chest. When the party ended and the guests trickled out, silence settled over the estate like a curtain. Luna stayed to clean, her footsteps light on the marble floor. She was polishing the last crystal glasses in the kitchen when she heard slow, heavy steps. Damien appeared in the doorway, his jacket gone, 2 buttons undone, dark hair tousled. He leaned against the frame, whiskey glass in hand, eyes glazed with drink. When he looked at Luna, it wasn't the gaze of an employer. It was distant, raw, filled with a hunger that came from somewhere hollow. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice rough and slurred. "They said someone would come." Luna froze, gripping her cleaning cloth tightly. "Sir, I'm Luna. I'm just cleaning," she said, her voice trembling. She backed away, heart pounding. Damien frowned, as if he hadn't heard. He stepped closer, his tall frame casting a shadow over her. "Don't pretend," he murmured, voice a mix of dominance and pain. "My friend said he'd send someone. What do you want? Money? How much is one night worth?" His words cut like glass. Luna backed up until her spine hit the counter, her breath caught in her throat. "Mr. Cross, I'm not that kind of woman. I'm just a maid," she said, trying to steady her voice, though her heart was breaking. She wanted to run, to push him away, but his eyes, behind the blur of alcohol, held the same loneliness she'd seen before. When he listened to jazz in his study, when he stood on the balcony in the rain, the same loneliness she carried herself, writing in her journal late at night, wondering if anyone would ever truly need her. Damien stepped closer, the scent of cologne and whiskey overwhelming her. "Don't be afraid," he said, voice softer now, almost pleading. He reached out and touched her cheek, his fingers cold, his eyes burning. "I won't hurt you." Luna trembled. Her mind screamed to refuse, to walk away. She knew he was drunk, knew he didn't see her. Not Luna Bennett, just a body to soothe the ache. But her heart, the one that had quietly fallen for him through stolen glances, a compliment about cookies, a question about jazz. It betrayed her. She loved him, even knowing it was hopeless. And in that moment, when he looked at her as if she were everything, she wanted just once to be close to him, to feel love, even if it was an illusion. "Luna," Damien whispered, like he was saying her name for the first time. He pulled her into his arms, his mouth finding hers, urgent, desperate. Luna didn't resist. She closed her eyes and let herself be swept away in her first kiss, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. The kiss carried all the love she had hidden, all the heartbreak of a girl who knew this moment would never truly belong to her. Damien led her to the master bedroom, where moonlight filtered through white curtains, painting silver across the bed. He undressed her slowly, possessive yet strangely gentle. Luna shivered beneath each touch, her body torn between fear and yearning. When he whispered her name, she didn't know if he meant her or someone else, but she didn't care. Just once, she wanted to belong to him, even if only in moonlight. When it was over, Luna lay beside him, body aching, heart shattered. Damien had fallen asleep, his face peaceful, just a man, not a cold CEO. She studied him, trying to memorize everything, his face in the moonlight, his steady breathing, the warmth beside her. Her tears came not just for what she had given him, but for knowing the dream would vanish with dawn. Exhausted, she closed her eyes and drifted into sleep beside him, too broken to walk away. Morning came with a pale light seeping through the curtains, waking Luna. She stirred, body sore, heart heavy. Damien was already awake, sitting up in bed, hair tousled, his gray eyes cold as he looked at her. A smirk curved his lips. "You're still here?" he said, voice low and sharp. "Don't think one night in my bed means anything." Luna froze, her heart stopping. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Damien didn't even look at her as he grabbed his phone from the nightstand and scrolled through his messages like she didn't exist. Then, without looking up, he added, "How much do you want?" "Just say it. I don't play these games." His words were a storm, tearing through what little she had left. Her blood turned to ice, each breath a struggle. Last night she had given herself to him, not for money, not for gain, but for love. A love she knew had no future. And now he saw her as a transaction, a cheap exchange. The pain was deeper than anything she had ever known. She didn't cry, not out of strength, but because the pain went beyond tears. Luna quietly rose, slipping back into her crumpled black dress, her hands shaking as she fastened each button. Damien glanced at her, a flicker of curiosity in his eyes, but no remorse. "I'll leave," she said, voice small but firm. "Thank you for everything." She walked out, every step like her world was collapsing beneath her. Damien didn't stop her, just stood there, watching her fragile silhouette disappear through the door. A strange discomfort stirred in him, but he brushed it off. To him, she was just a girl, a passing moment. Luna returned to her small servant's room, sat on the narrow bed, and clutched her pillow as the tears finally fell. The pain of losing her first time mingled with the shame of being seen as someone who sold herself. She couldn't stay, not here, not after this. She picked up a piece of paper and wrote, "Dear Mr. Cross, I resign effective today. Thank you for the opportunity. Luna Bennett." She left the letter on the kitchen counter where the housekeeper would find it, then packed her things into her old suitcase. Before leaving the estate, she stood at the gate, looking back at the place that had given her both hope and heartbreak. Her eyes lingered on the window of Damien's room, where a faint light still glowed. "Goodbye, Damien," she whispered. Then she stepped into the early morning fog, unaware that this night hadn't just changed her, but had also set the course for a destiny neither of them could escape. 3 years had passed since Luna Bennett left the Cross estate. The small town of Willow Creek, nestled beside a lazy river in New England, had become her sanctuary. Cobblestone streets, white-painted wooden houses, and wildflower fields stretching to the horizon offered her a peace she had never known in the city. Here no one knew her past. No one asked about the man she sometimes glimpsed in her son Leo's eyes. Willow Creek was where Luna rebuilt her life, not for herself, but for the 3-year-old boy who had become her entire world. Luna arrived in Willow Creek pregnant, carrying nothing but an old suitcase and a few $100s saved from her time at the estate. Martha, an elderly woman with silver hair and a warm smile, welcomed her into Sweet Haven, the town's cozy bakery on Main Street. "You need a place to start over, don't you?" Martha had said, handing Luna an apron and a job frosting cakes. She also introduced her to a kind landlord who rented Luna a small upstairs apartment in a wooden house, something she could just afford. From there, Luna learned how to knead dough, bake fresh bread, and swirl icing on cupcakes. Each day was a step away from what she had left behind. Leo, Luna's son, was the light in her darkest days. With thick black hair and sparkling gray eyes, he looked so much like Damien Cross that it sometimes startled her. A small teardrop-shaped birthmark behind his ear, visible only when she brushed his hair, was a silent reminder of the father he had never met. But Leo wasn't just Damien's reflection. He had a brilliant smile, endless curiosity, and dreams of becoming an astronaut. "Mom, I'm going to the moon!" he'd shout, waving a plastic stick like a sword, while Luna laughed and pulled him into her arms. When he asked about his dad, she'd smile softly and say, "You have me, and I love you more than the whole universe. That's enough, right?" Leo, in his innocent way, would nod and run off to draw another picture of his astronaut hero. Luna's life in Willow Creek was simple, but not easy. Raising a child alone at 25 was a challenge, especially without any family to lean on. Her bakery wages barely covered rent, food, and Leo's preschool tuition, with little left over. Some nights after Leo had fallen asleep, she'd sit at the small kitchen table, poring over bills beneath a dim light, her heart heavy with worry. But she never complained. Her joy came from the little things: Leo's laughter while they played backyard baseball, the smell of freshly baked cookies, or bedtime stories told under a desk lamp, her voice soft as she described flying dinosaurs and moon adventures. Sweet Haven gave Luna a sense of purpose. She loved the feel of flour on her hands, the way loaves puffed golden in the oven, and the smiles on customers' faces when they praised her apple pie. Martha became like a mother to her, always ready to listen, even if Luna rarely spoke of the past. Only once did she open up, when Martha gently asked about Leo's father. Luna looked out the window, her eyes distant. "He's not a bad man," she whispered, "but he doesn't belong to us." Martha didn't pry. She simply rested a hand on Luna's shoulder, offering silent comfort. Despite building a new life, Luna couldn't fully escape Damien's shadow. Sometimes when Leo tilted his head just so, while throwing a baseball, or when he laughed with that same gleam in his eyes, Damien's image would flash through her mind. The man on the balcony in the rain, who had unknowingly stolen her heart. She wondered if he ever thought of her, even once. But then she would shake the thought away, tucking it deep inside. She was no longer the wide-eyed girl at the Cross estate. She was Leo's mother, a woman who had learned to stand on her own, even if that strength came solely from the love she had for her child. The afternoon sun cast a golden glow over Willow Creek as it dipped behind the distant hills. Sweet Haven Bakery, with its rustic carved wooden sign, exuded the warm scent of butter cookies and fresh apple pie, luring passers-by in like a spell. Behind the counter stood Luna Bennett, now 25, her short brown hair tucked neatly behind her ears, her white apron dusted with flour. 3 years in this town had changed her. No longer the timid maid from the Cross estate, she now carried herself with quiet confidence, though her blue eyes still held a trace of guarded sorrow. She smiled warmly as she wrapped a box of cookies for an elderly customer, but her thoughts were with Leo, her 3-year-old son, who was drawing superheroes in the play corner. The bell over the door jingled, and Luna looked up, ready to greet a new customer. But when the man stepped inside, her smile froze, as if time itself stopped. Damien Cross stood there, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit, his dark hair slicked back, his sharp gray eyes scanning the bakery like he was assessing a new investment. He was tall, commanding, exactly as she remembered, the man who had once shattered her heart. But there was something different now. Faint lines near his eyes, a weariness in his expression she hadn't seen before. Luna dropped her gaze immediately, pretending to wipe the counter, her hands trembling so badly she nearly dropped the rag. She prayed he wouldn't recognize her, prayed he'd just buy something and leave. Damien hadn't come to Willow Creek looking for Luna. Cross Enterprises was scouting land along the river to build a luxury resort, and he was there to survey a nearby property. Sweet Haven had simply caught his attention, a moment of indulgence drawn in by the smell of butter cookies. He stood at the counter, eyes skimming the trays of pastries, but his attention lingered on Luna. Something about her, the softness in her voice as she greeted another customer, the flicker of blue in her eyes, struck a chord of vague familiarity. But he couldn't place it. 3 years ago, Luna had been just another maid at his estate, a nameless shadow he'd barely noticed. But this woman, with her short hair, flour-covered apron, and steady presence, felt entirely new. "A loaf of barley bread," Damien said, his deep voice firm, eyes still on the display. "Make it quick." Luna nodded, avoiding his gaze. She reached for the loaf with icy hands, wrapped it in brown paper, and forced her voice to stay calm. "Here you go, sir," she murmured, barely above a whisper. She slid the package across the counter, avoiding his eyes, heart pounding so loud she feared he might hear it. Damien took the bag, dropped a few coins on the counter, and turned toward the door. But then a small voice called out from the corner, stopping him in his tracks. "Mommy, I finished my drawing." Leo, in a cozy blue sweater, ran out of the play area, clutching a crumpled piece of paper. He had tousled black hair, sparkling gray eyes, and a beaming smile. "Look, I drew you, me, and a spaceship." Luna knelt and wrapped her arms around him, forcing a smile despite the knot in her chest. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," she said gently, her voice strained. She could feel Damien's stare from across the room. She rose slowly, shielding Leo behind her as she faced him. Damien stood frozen, a to-go coffee cup forgotten in his hand. He looked at Leo and felt a strange, disorienting sensation, like staring at an old photo of himself as a child. The gray eyes, the lopsided smile. And when Leo turned his head, a small teardrop-shaped birthmark behind his ear peeked out from beneath his hair. Damien's hand instinctively touched the same spot behind his own ear. An identical mark. His heart slammed against his chest. A vague suspicion took root, terrifying in its clarity. He shifted his gaze to Luna, for the first time truly seeing her. The woman from the library, the maid who baked the cookies, who whispered to him about jazz. It was her, Luna Bennett. "Luna," he said hoarsely, barely believing his eyes. Luna straightened, her expression cool and unreadable. There was no trace of the girl who once loved him in silence. "Good afternoon, Mr. Cross," she said, voice flat and distant. "Can I help you with anything else?" Her words were a slap. The way she said Mr. Cross, the wall in her eyes, it left Damien speechless. He wanted to say something, to ask her why she was here, why she had disappeared. But then he looked again at Leo, and his voice failed him. "Leo, go play with Miss Martha for a little bit, okay, honey?" Luna said gently. She handed the boy to Martha, who had just stepped out from the kitchen, then turned back to Damien. "If you're not buying anything else, please leave. I have work to do." Damien stepped closer to the counter, his voice low and urgent. "Luna, we need to talk. I didn't know you were here. I didn't even know—" He stopped himself. His gaze flicked again toward Leo. The possibility rattled him. Luna let out a hollow laugh, sharp and humorless. "Talk?" she echoed bitterly. "You don't remember, Mr. Cross? I was just a mistake from a drunken night. There's nothing left to say." Her words cut him clean. He remembered that night. Whiskey, grief, her eyes as she left. He remembered the cruel things he'd said. And now seeing her here, a woman strong, independent, yet carrying invisible scars, he felt something deeper than regret. His eyes drifted to the child again. That thought, could it be? "Don't," Luna said coldly. "Don't ask questions you have no right to ask. You had everything you wanted 3 years ago. Now please, leave us alone." Damien wanted to argue, wanted to beg her to stay, but her eyes, so full of hurt, stopped him. He turned, walked out of the bakery, each step heavier than the last. When the door shut behind him, he paused on the sidewalk, looking back through the window. Inside, Luna knelt to hug Leo, her smile warm and full of love. And for the first time in years, Damien felt something he didn't recognize. Fear. Fear that he had missed something precious and might never get it back. Under the gray skies of Willow Creek, Damien Cross sat in a temporary office near the resort development site, the desk lamp casting a stark light across his tense face. The small room, with its plain wooden desk and the lingering scent of stale coffee, was a sharp contrast to his luxurious office back in the city. In front of him lay a thin stack of documents, yet every page felt like a dagger cutting deep into his heart. After the unexpected encounter at Sweet Haven Bakery, Damien had hired a private investigator, swiftly and discreetly, to look into Luna Bennett and the boy named Leo. Now, just 3 days later, the truth was in front of him, clear and undeniable. The report was concise. Luna Bennett, 25 years old, had lived in Willow Creek for 3 years and worked at Sweet Haven Bakery. She lived alone with her son, Leo Bennett, 3 years old, born on August 15th at a small hospital on the outskirts of town. No father's name was listed on the birth certificate, but the detail that made Damien stop breathing was Leo's medical record. Blood type AB negative, a rare type, identical to his own. Then he opened the attached photograph, taken from a distance, showing a teardrop-shaped birthmark behind Leo's ear, exactly like his own. Damien closed the file, his hands trembling, knuckles white. There was no need for a DNA test. Leo was his son. Damien stood and walked to the window, gazing down the road leading to the town center, where the lights of Sweet Haven glowed warmly. Images of Leo, those sparkling gray eyes, the crooked smile, the way he waved his arms while talking about spaceships, filled Damien's mind, vivid like memories from his own childhood. And Luna, the woman he once regarded as invisible, had raised their child alone, without a single complaint, without once seeking him out. That truth hit like a storm, tearing apart the armor he had built around himself, the invincible billionaire who believed everything could be bought. He sat down, buried his face in his hands, and his mind rewound to that night 3 years ago. He remembered the whiskey, a friend's teasing comment about company, and Luna's eyes, frightened yet filled with compassion, when he mistook her for someone else. He remembered the cruel words he'd said the next morning as she quietly left. "Don't think one night gives you any right to ask anything from me." He'd thought she didn't matter, just a fleeting moment in a drunken haze. But now her pained expression at the bakery, the strength in her voice when she defended Leo, haunted him like a curse he couldn't escape. One afternoon, Damien returned to Sweet Haven, not for pastries, but to find Martha, the owner. In the back kitchen, surrounded by the scent of flour and vanilla, he asked about Luna, keeping his voice steady though his heart pounded. "She's a strong girl," Martha said, pride gleaming in her eyes. "Came here with nothing but the clothes on her back, pregnant, and never asked anyone for help. She lives for Leo, and that boy is her whole world." She paused, watching Damien as if she wanted to say more, but only smiled. "She deserves to be happy, you know." Martha's words struck him like a blow. Damien left the bakery, walking along the cobbled street, heavy with guilt. He thought of an old keepsake, a kind of Blue Miles Davis CD he once saw Luna holding in the library. Back at the hotel, he rummaged through his suitcase and found it, the label worn, but still carrying memories of nights when he let his true self show. He played the music, letting the melancholic jazz fill the room. And for the first time in years, Damien felt small. He had been wrong to treat everything like a transaction, wrong to abandon Luna, and wrong to let his son grow up without a father. In the days that followed, Damien watched Luna and Leo from a distance, unable to approach. He stood outside the bakery in the early mornings, watching her walk Leo to daycare, the boy skipping beside her, clutching a superhero drawing. He saw her smile at her son, a tender smile he had never seen when she worked at his estate. He went to the daycare playground and watched Leo chase his friends, laughter echoing, and each time he saw the boy's face, Damien's heart ached. He wanted to run to him, to hold him, and say, "I'm your father," but he couldn't. Not because he feared Luna's rejection, but because he knew he hadn't earned the right. Damien began to take action, but carefully. He contacted the hospital where Leo was born, using his connections to access old records. The report confirmed Luna had gone into early labor, spent 2 weeks in the hospital due to exhaustion, with no one by her side. The image of her, young, scared, holding their baby in a cold hospital room, made it hard to breathe. He called his assistant and ordered pastries from Sweet Haven for company meetings, a quiet way to support Luna without raising suspicion. He sent a small bicycle for Leo through Martha, saying it was from a loyal customer. Each night, Damien sat in his hotel room, staring at the photograph the investigator had sent. Luna and Leo walking by the river, the boy holding a wildflower smiling up at his mother. Damien wrote a letter of apology, but tore it up after just a few lines. Words weren't enough. He had to prove, through actions, through time, that he was no longer the man who had pushed her out of his life. He looked out the window, the bakery lights glowing like a distant beacon, and whispered, "I won't lose the two of you again." Damien knew his path to redemption had just begun. Luna didn't believe him. The cold look in her eyes made that clear. But he wouldn't give up. Not for Leo, not for Luna, and not for the man he was trying to become, for the first time in his life, a good man. Winter had draped Willow Creek in a soft layer of snow, glistening like powdered sugar under the lanterns of the town's annual winter fair. The cobbled streets of the small New England town transformed into a vibrant painting of handmade stalls, the warm scent of gingerbread, and steaming cups of hot apple cider. Children's laughter mingled with folk music from a local band, creating a cozy atmosphere amid the biting December cold. Luna Bennett, Damien Cross, and little Leo walked into the fair, a scene Luna could not have imagined just weeks ago. In the past few weeks, Damien had slowly built trust. He frequently stopped by Sweet Haven Bakery, placed company orders, chatted with Martha, and found gentle ways to talk to Luna. At first, she responded curtly, but his sincerity gradually softened her guard. He once helped Leo retrieve a runaway baseball and sent him a picture book about astronauts through Martha, prompting Leo to squeal, "Mom, the man from the bakery knew I love space." Despite her caution, Luna saw how much Leo liked Damien, and the man never crossed a line. When Damien suggested they attend the winter fair together, Luna hesitated, but agreed after Martha vouched for him. though she warned, "I'll be close to Leo at all times." At the fair, Leo, bundled in a blue coat, skipped between Luna and Damien, his gray eyes sparkling as he gazed at the glowing lanterns. Luna held his hand tightly, never looking away, while Damien walked beside them, smiling as Leo dragged them toward the ring toss booth. The boy cheered when he won a stuffed bear, then burst into laughter as Damien bought him a cotton candy nearly the size of his face. "Mr. Damien, this is huge!" Leo shouted, sugar on his mouth. Luna stood nearby, hands in her coat pockets, a fleeting smile on her lips at Leo's joy, but her eyes stayed watchful, as if measuring every moment. They stopped at a booth selling hot apple cider. Damien waited in line to buy 3 cups. Leo, standing beside Luna, spotted a colorful ice cream cart a few yards away, its roof decorated with bright balloons. "Mom, I want a balloon," he said, tugging her hand. Luna held his hand firmly and smiled. "We'll get one later, sweetheart." Just then, her phone rang. Martha, urgent, on the line. "Luna, the oven at the shop broke. Smoke everywhere. I need you here right now." Luna hesitated, glancing at Leo clutching his bear, eyes full of joy. She wanted to take him with her, but he pouted. "I don't want to leave. The fair is so fun." Damien returned with the cider, overhearing the exchange. "Luna, I can watch Leo for an hour," he said sincerely. "I'll keep him safe, and you can come back once things are under control." Luna shook her head, but Leo tugged her hand, eyes pleading. "Mom, I want to stay with Mr. Damien." She looked into her son's eyes, then into Damien's, his gaze unwavering. After a tense pause, she finally nodded, reluctant. "1 hour," she said firmly, "and don't let him out of your sight." Luna hurried back to the bakery, heart uneasy but believing Damien would keep Leo safe. Damien held Leo's hand, guiding him through the stalls, trying to keep him entertained to ward off any tension. But when they stopped at a game booth, Damien was approached by a business associate from the resort project. "Cross, we need to talk about that land contract," the man said enthusiastically. Damien glanced at Leo, who was tossing balls with a game attendant. He nodded, thinking it would only take a minute. But in the moment Damien turned away, Leo spotted a red balloon drifting through the crowd and chased after it, slipping away from the booth. "Leo!" Damien shouted when he realized the boy was gone. He tore through the crowd, eyes scanning faces, strangers, other children, but no sign of Leo. The fair's cheerful music became chaotic noise. He asked a vendor, a couple, but no one had seen a boy in a blue coat. His heart pounded, fear gripping him. He called Luna, his voice trembling. "Luna, Leo's missing. I'm looking, but please come now." Back at the bakery, Luna had just fixed the oven when the call came. Hearing Damien's voice, she dropped her tools, face going pale. She sprinted out into the snowy streets toward the fair, panic clawing at her chest. When she arrived, she found Damien in the crowd, hair tousled, eyes wild. "Luna, I'm so sorry," he stammered. "I looked away for just a minute." She didn't hear him. She ran between booths, shouting Leo's name until her voice went raw. Leo was her entire world. The thought of losing him made it hard to breathe. Finally, she heard soft crying near the parking lot. She dashed toward the sound and saw a drunken man gripping Leo's arm, mumbling, "My grandson, where'd you run off to?" The man's eyes, glassy from alcohol, had mistaken Leo for his own grandchild. "Let go of my son!" Luna screamed, charging forward. The man startled and released Leo, stumbling backward. Damien appeared and punched the man hard in the jaw, sending him sprawling into the snow. He scooped Leo up, checking him quickly, then turned the drunk over to fair security. Luna pulled Leo into her arms, holding him tight as tears streamed down her cheeks. She didn't say anything, just shook her head, her eyes full of pain as she looked at Damien, as if asking why he didn't keep his promise. Leo sobbed, clinging to his mother. Damien stood frozen, his hand bleeding from a scrape, wanting to explain. But Luna's eyes silenced him. She hugged Leo and walked away, stepping through the snow toward the fair's exit. A local reporter there to cover the fair recognized Damien from articles about the resort project. He'd witnessed the altercation, snapped a photo of Damien with Luna and Leo, and jotted down notes. After that night, Luna became even more distant. She didn't respond when Damien visited the bakery. Her eyes, once cautious, now looked shattered. Damien felt the looming fear of losing her and Leo forever, a pain deeper than any business failure. 10 days later, following town gossip and public records, the reporter published a front-page article in the local paper. CEO Damian Cross has a secret child in Willow Creek? Luna saw the headline on her phone, her heart heavy. She didn't want Leo caught in a media storm. She knew then. She couldn't stay. She packed only what was necessary and left a short note for Martha. "Thank you for giving me a home. I'm sorry for leaving so suddenly. Luna?" She told no one where she was going, not even Damien. That night, she boarded a bus with Leo asleep on her chest. As the vehicle pulled away from Willow Creek, she looked out the window, silent tears falling. She didn't hate Damien, but she couldn't let his world of power and headlines destroy Leo's peace. Back in his rented house, Damien read the article with empty eyes. The company didn't matter. The headlines didn't matter. He only wanted Luna and Leo. When he went to the bakery and Martha handed him Luna's note, his heart seized. Just a few lines, but they cut deeper than any loss. "Thank you for giving me a home. I'm sorry for leaving so suddenly. Luna?" Damien gripped the letter, knowing that if he wanted to find them, he had to change, not just with words, but with his entire being. He swore to find Luna and Leo, not to force them back, but to prove that he had become the man worthy of them. The first spring rain poured down over Pine Hollow, a small town nestled among the pine forests of New England, soaking the dirt roads and tapping steadily on the wooden roof of the modest cottage Luna Bennett now rented. The little house, with its narrow porch and tiny vegetable garden, had become the place where Luna and Leo began again after leaving Willow Creek. Luna worked at a local cafe, making lattes and baking bread, while Leo adjusted to his new preschool, drawing spaceships on sheets of paper. But despite her efforts to build a new home, Luna couldn't shake the emptiness that lingered in her heart. The article about the billionaire's secret child and the memory of the winter fair, where she almost lost Leo, still haunted her every night. One evening, as heavy rain fell, Luna sat by the window, watching water stream down the glass. Leo was asleep in his room, hugging the stuffed bear from the fair. Her thoughts wandered to Damien, not the cold man who had once hurt her, but the one who had patiently shown up at the bakery, who had punched a drunken man to protect Leo. She wondered if she had left too quickly, if she should have given him a chance to explain, but fear of being hurt again made her shake her head and hold her cooling mug of tea tighter. A sudden knock at the door startled her. With Leo asleep, she rose, threw on a sweater, and opened the door. Damian Cross stood there, drenched in the downpour, his white shirt clinging to his body, black hair plastered to his forehead. His gray eyes burned with a determination she had never seen before. He held no umbrella, rain pouring down his face, but he stood still, as if the cold meant nothing. "Luna," he said, voice hoarse but steady, "I need to talk. Just 5 minutes." Luna froze, heart pounding. She wanted to shut the door, to push him out of her life again, but his eyes, sincere and almost pleading, made her hesitate. She crossed her arms, her voice icy. "Mr. Cross, how did you find me? And what do you want now?" Damien stepped onto the porch, letting the rain soak him, making no move to intrude on her space. "I hired someone to find you," he admitted plainly, "but I'm not here to force anything. I'm here to apologize, to beg for your forgiveness." Luna shook her head, eyes shimmering with unshed tears, though she held them back. "Apologies don't change anything, Damien. You had your chance 3 years ago, and you chose to hurt me." Damien lowered his head, fists clenched at his sides, rain dripping from his hair onto the wooden floor. "I know," he said, voice deep and pained. "I was wrong to think everything could be bought. Love, trust, even people. I was wrong not to see your worth, to walk away from you and Leo. Since the day you left the estate, I've felt like I've been walking through life without truly living. And when I learned about Leo, I realized I'd lost the most precious thing I ever had." He looked up, eyes locking with hers. "I don't want to drag you into my world, Luna. I want to be part of yours. Taking Leo to preschool, sitting with you in this house, listening to you talk about your cafe shifts. I want to be the man who knows how to love, not the billionaire you once knew." His words were like spring wind, slipping through the walls Luna had built around her heart. She looked at him, soaked, shivering from the cold, yet steady in his gaze. He didn't kneel, didn't make grand promises, just stood there with a sincerity that cut deep. She remembered how he played with Leo, how he dove into the crowd to find him at the fair, and the pain in his eyes when she left Willow Creek. "Damien," she said, her voice trembling, "I'm scared. Scared you'll hurt me again. Scared for Leo." Damien stepped closer but stopped a step short, respecting her space. "I swear, Luna," he said softly but firmly, "I will never hurt you or Leo again. Give me a chance, not to fix the past, but to prove I can be the man you need." She looked into his eyes and saw the truth she had longed for 3 years ago. Her tears finally fell, blending with the rain. She stepped onto the porch, letting it soak her sweater, and stood before him. "Okay," she whispered, voice soft but resolute, "but if you hurt me or Leo again, I'll never forgive you." Damien smiled, the first real smile Luna had ever seen from him, not the polished smile of a CEO, but of a man who'd found hope. He reached out, gently touching her shoulder as if afraid she might vanish. "Thank you, Luna," he murmured, voice thick with emotion. She nodded, allowing him to pull her into a gentle embrace as rain poured around them, washing away old pain. Luna led Damien inside, handing him a towel to dry off. Leo still slept soundly, unaware his parents had just found their way back to each other. Damien sat at the kitchen table, taking in the modest home with reverent eyes. "I'm staying in Pine Hollow," he said. "I'll do whatever it takes to prove I'm worthy of you and Leo." Luna looked at him, a small smile blooming, one that, for the first time, wasn't touched by sorrow. "Then start now, Damien," she said. "Be the man I can believe in." That night, they sat at the kitchen table, talking about small things. Leo, the cafe, the rainy days in Pine Hollow. Beneath the warm light, Luna felt a flicker of hope that maybe this time she had placed her trust in the right person. Spring in Pine Hollow arrived with gentle breezes that swept through the pine forests and rustled the wildflowers in the small garden behind Luna Bennett's wooden cottage. The house, with its narrow porch and floral curtains, was no longer just a shelter for Luna and Leo. It had become a place where Damien Cross was learning how to be part of a family. Ever since that rainy night when Luna gave him a second chance, Damien had rented a small apartment just a few blocks from the cafe where Luna worked, determined to prove he was no longer the cold man who once hurt her. Every morning, Luna and Damien worked side by side at Pine Brew Cafe, a cozy space filled with wooden tables and the rich aroma of roasted coffee. Luna, wearing a green apron, made lattes and baked bread, while Damien, once accustomed to luxury boardrooms, learned to operate the espresso machine and take customer orders. He was clumsy, spilling milk, mixing up names, but every time Luna laughed and wiped coffee off his hand, he felt closer to her world. "You're a CEO and still can't beat this machine?" she teased, eyes sparkling. Damien grinned and kissed her forehead. "Because now, all I want is to do things right, for you and Leo." In the afternoons, they picked up Leo from preschool together. The nearly 4-year-old boy would run to the gate, shouting joyfully at the sight of his mom and Mr. Damien. Damien often carried Leo on his shoulders, letting him point out birds in the sky, while Luna held Damien's hand and shared funny customer stories from the cafe. At home, they cooked dinner together, usually Leo's favorite spaghetti, and spent the evenings building block towers or drawing. Leo, with his wild imagination, once drew the three of them on a spaceship, making Luna and Damien exchange warm, knowing glances. But their journey wasn't without struggles. Luna still had days of doubt when memories of the Cross estate resurfaced. One night, after Leo had gone to sleep, she sat on the porch watching the soft drizzle and asked Damien, "Are you sure, Damien? This life, small house, cafe shifts, no mansion or power, is enough for you?" Damien sat beside her, took her hand gently. "Luna, I once had everything, and I was never truly happy. You and Leo, you're my whole world now." She looked into his eyes, saw sincerity, but she still needed time to fully believe it. Damien also had to learn how to be a father. Though Leo adored him, the boy sometimes asked questions that caught him off guard. "Mr. Damien, why didn't you live with me and Mommy before?" Leo asked once, clutching a wooden block. After a pause, Damien replied, "I got lost, Leo. But now I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. He taught Leo how to throw a baseball in the backyard, patiently showing him each movement. When Leo finally hit the target, he ran into Damien's arms, shouting, "Mr. Damien, I did it!" Damien, eyes stinging, held him tight, feeling for the first time what it meant to be a father. To show his transformation, Damien started with the practical. He helped Luna fix the garden fence, repaint the porch, and even tried baking with her, though he usually ended up covered in flour. He turned down a major Cross Enterprises deal to stay in Pine Hollow, delegating control to his city team. Inspired by Luna's journey, he also launched a small charity project, Haven of Hope, to support single mothers and orphans. "I don't want anyone to feel as alone as you once did," he told her. And for the first time, Luna hugged him without hesitation. Their greatest test came when Leo caught a cold and ran a high fever through the night. Luna and Damien stayed up, taking turns checking his temperature and placing cool cloths on his forehead. When Leo finally woke, weak but smiling, calling for Mommy and Mr. Damien, Luna looked at Damien and saw the worry and love in his eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, for the first time using his name without a barrier. Damien kissed the top of her head, relief washing over him. One spring afternoon, Damien organized a small picnic in the backyard with Luna's homemade bread and fresh apple juice. Leo ran through the garden chasing butterflies while Luna and Damien sat on a blanket, watching him. "Do you think we'll be okay?" Luna asked softly. Damien took her hand, his gaze steady. "We'll be okay, Luna, because we have each other." That night, after Leo fell asleep, Luna and Damien sat on the porch, gazing at the stars shining through the pines. She leaned on his shoulder, feeling safe for the first time in years. "I used to think I'd never trust anyone again," she said. "But you're changing that." Damien smiled, pulling her closer. "And I won't stop trying, Luna. Not as long as it's for you and Leo." Under the starlight, they both knew their family wasn't perfect, but it was real, built on simple things: spaghetti dinners, baseball throws, and embraces in the rain. The kind of moments that made up true happiness. Summer arrived in Pine Hollow, bathing the small New England town in a soft golden light that made the pine forest glisten and the garden behind Luna Bennett's wooden cottage bloom with wildflowers. The house, with its freshly painted porch and floral curtains, had become the heart of a growing family. Luna, Damien Cross, and nearly 4-year-old Leo had found their own rhythm. Mornings brewing coffee, afternoons tossing baseballs, and evenings filled with bedtime stories under warm lights. After months of Damien patiently proving his love, Luna finally felt her heart open, no longer trapped by the fear of her past. One June afternoon, with sunlight filtering through the pine branches, Damien led Luna and Leo into the backyard, saying he had a surprise. Leo, brandishing a plastic stick like a space sword, squealed with delight when he saw the far corner of the garden, decorated with paper lanterns and a blanket spread out on the grass, topped with Luna's homemade bread and apple cider. Luna smiled, thinking it was just a family picnic, until Damien dropped to one knee, and her heart skipped a beat. From his pocket, he pulled a small velvet box, opening it to reveal a silver ring engraved with daisies, simple yet elegant, like the flowers she loved in her garden. "Luna," he said, his voice steady and deep, "you gave me a chance to make things right. I can't promise you the whole world, but I promise to spend my life loving and protecting you and Leo. Will you marry me?" Luna covered her mouth, eyes shimmering with tears. Leo, standing beside them, jumped up and shouted, "Mom, marry Mr. Damien. I want him to be my dad." Luna laughed through her tears, knelt before Damien, and embraced him. "Yes, Damien," she whispered, "I'll marry you." He slipped the ring on her finger and kissed her softly as Leo dove between them, knocking all three onto the blanket in a burst of laughter under the golden light. The wedding took place a few weeks later, right there in the backyard. It wasn't extravagant, just a few close friends, Martha from Willow Creek, co-workers from Pine Brew, and neighbors from Pine Hollow. But it overflowed with love. Luna wore a simple white dress that fell to her ankles, her brown hair loose with a crown of daisies. Damien, in a light gray suit, stood beneath a wooden arch he had built himself, eyes never leaving her. Leo, in a tiny vest, proudly tossed rose petals from a basket, grinning as he shouted, "Mom married Dad!" They exchanged vows under the setting sun. Luna, her voice trembling with emotion, said, "Damien, you gave me a family. I promise to stand by you through everything." Damien took her hands, eyes sincere. "Luna, you are my light. I promise to love and cherish you every day of my life." They exchanged silver rings and kissed under the golden sky, surrounded by applause and laughter. The reception was simple but warm. Cupcakes baked by Luna and Damien, apple cider in mason jars, and soft violin music from a neighbor. Leo ran through the garden with his friends, laughter echoing in the air. Damien never let go of Luna's hand, pulling her into a slow dance on the grass and whispering, "Thank you for giving me a home." Luna leaned into his chest, smiling. "Thank you for becoming mine." That night, Damien carried a sleepy Leo back inside, while Luna walked beside him. They stood by Leo's bed, watching him sleep under the soft glow of the lamp, the stuffed bear from the fair still clutched in his arms. Damien wrapped his arms around Luna from behind and whispered, "I never thought I could be this happy." She turned to him, pressing a soft kiss to his lips. "Neither did I, Damien." In the months that followed, they embraced their simple life. Luna opened a small bakery, Pine Blossom, right beside the cafe, selling cookies and apple pies. Damien painted walls and hauled flour, always close by. He continued his work with Haven of Hope, supporting single mothers and orphans, often bringing Luna and Leo to events so they could see the heart behind his work. Leo, now calling Damien Dad, started asking about camping trips and the puppy he'd always dreamed of. Under the summer moonlight, Luna and Damien sat on the porch, gazing at the stars through the pine canopy. They talked about the future, not grand dreams, but simple things, a beach trip, a bigger garden, and maybe someday a sibling for Leo. "We don't need everything," Luna said, her hand laced in his. "Just the right people." Damien smiled, pulling her into his arms. "And I've already found mine." Beneath the pine hollow stars, they knew their happiness didn't come from perfection, but from the little things. Leo's laughter, embraces in the kitchen, and a love that had weathered pain to finally find its home. It was real and they would cherish it, one day at a time. Do you believe in love overcoming pain like Luna and Damien? Comment below and follow the channel to see more inspiring stories like this.